I love seeing all these faces. It has been so long. Yeah, round of applause for everybody here because it is great. And our thanks to Mary and to Shanti for all they did to make this in-person meeting happen. And to Ava, who will be taping it and putting it up on YouTube for us after she works her magic. For all those who couldn't make it, or if you just want to watch it again. I think we have some guests. Could I ask guests just to stand up and say your name? Or, okay.
My mouth is sorry. I'm Harmony.
Welcome, Harmony.
With a full mouth.
And that will keep anybody else from doing it because they'll be shaking. Yes.
Maria Pleadwell.
Maria Pleadwell. You're with Carolyn Saylor. And another Maria who I didn't catch last name. Welcome.
Marilyn Orton, Stephanie's daughter.
Yes, welcome. Welcome, Susan. This is terrific. And
another Susan.
oh my God. Welcome, Susan. Gosh, actual public at our meeting and a meeting in person. This is going to be a great program today. I'm going to get some AAUW business and orientation out of the way, and then we will pass it to Mary to introduce Jan Nottingham for a really great program. Local news. We have one piece of local news that we want to add. So Robin Reeves had an announcement.
Do you want me to come up there with a, can you hear my voice? Yeah. In the Lodestone, I had announced that tomorrow would be the poetry and song concert from In Concert Sierra. And I put it in the Lodestone because we're supporting with the Cleo Gibson Award one of the young ladies who is a composer. Due to very layered complexities around COVID, I'll just say that. The event tomorrow will not have an audience anymore. If you bought tickets, you can certainly contact the office to get a refund, but the students will still have their music performed by professional musicians and it will be recorded. So in case you were coming to buy a ticket at the door, I wanted to make that announcement.
Thank you. Thank you, Robin. We do have some news that I want to share with you so that you know all that is going on behind the scenes. The biggest news at the moment is our nominating committee, which is chaired by CeCe Royal and joined by extraordinary members Melanie Heckel, Fran Erickson, and Bernadette Sylvester, have spent the last 2 months working on next year's slate of officers. These names will be in the Lodestone for April, and at the April meeting, you will vote for the slate of officers. So I'd like to thank those who said yes to a position, because mostly volunteer work, you ladies are involved in everything, and you know so much of leadership means you say yes. You will help, you will do it. So these wonderful people, Deborah York is going to be on the slate for our presidency. Fran Erickson has volunteered to be our secretary. I don't know where Fran is, but yay. Jennifer Wilkerson will continue as finance officer. She's gotten the hang of that, so that's a good idea. She's unable to be here today, but thank you, Jennifer. Program VP Mary Weaver is going to continue, for which we are very grateful. She's got the hang of this too, so we're happy to have her skills extending to a second year. And thank you, Shanti, for all you did this year. It's a huge job. Membership VP, Deb Coverly, which you probably met Deb out of the door. She was helping with name tags this morning, so thank you, Deb. And newish member Carol McMillan is stepping up for AAUW Fund. I know she's here this morning. Thank you, Carol. Yay. We also have appointed officers. These officers are not up for election, but they have agreed to serve and they have critical roles in this organization. So if it's a new member or new to the position, the office, their names are in bold. Someone who's already been in the office, their names are not in bold. So local scholarship, Rhea Williamson is taking that on. Huge job. Public policy, Melanie Heckel and Lisa Turlo will be sharing that, for which we are grateful, taking over from Deb York, who's done such a great job these last couple of years. Publicity Tech Direct, Martha Rees, huzzah. Oh, communications, I'm going to help with a piece of that. They assured me I didn't have to do very much, so I'm banking on it. Ways and Means, Chris Boykin, thank you so much for stepping up. Chris Boykin will be the one with the aprons and the goodies, and that's terrific. Hospitality, Gretchen Corbin is going to step up for that. Our hospitality team of Rose and Sharon did a fabulous job today. They're gonna, Chris has got a good act to follow. Gretchen, excuse me. Interest group, Susie Monero Wilson will continue. Lodestone editor, big change. Sue Miller, exhausted by the quilt show, is stepping back for at least a year, and Cece is going to pick up the Lodestone. So, thank you, Cece. Distribution, Jan Williams is continuing. Thank you, Jan. Directory database, yes, the familiar face, Cece. She's going to go for that again, and it'll be as good as ever or better. Friendship, Pat's continuing. Historian, Margaret's continuing. She's over at the library once a week working on our archives along with Shirley Zeff. Fundraiser is open, so if you have skills in fundraising, let me know. Financial underwriters, Karen Hall, who's not able to be here today, I don't think, is taking that on. She is a businesswoman and an AAUW member and also on the local NID board. So we look forward to her expertise and outreach in that position. And photography, our team that has done such a great job. Martha was taking pictures this morning. Martha, Bernadette, and Sue, they will continue taking pictures of you at unexpected moments. We do need nominees for another position. We will annually present the Edie Silverman Community Service Award. We have members who are involved in many, many things throughout the community, and we recognize their involvement and their contributions. So that, of course, we need your input. If you have nominees, please email Melanie Heckel, or tell her today, she's back there in a green shirt, who you'd like to nominate, and be sure to explain why, because the committee will meet, weigh the various nominees, and see what the best choices are for this year. If you already nominated someone last year with information, they've got those, and they will consider those also. So unless there's a change and you already sent a nominee last year, you're good. Okay? The deadline for that is April 10th, and we look forward to that selection and to seeing the awardee probably at the May meeting. Tech Track. If you see a Tech Track person, congratulate them and pat them on the back because they're getting tired. They started the interviews for the camp. Our good news, there will be a camp at UC Davis in July that we are just so excited about in person. We're only able to send 6 girls this time. We have to adjust to whatever the situation is, so we're making the best of that and focusing on being happy they get to go in person. So they're in the midst of interviews. They had interviews on St. Patrick's Day, yesterday, and that group has interviews today. So they're going to be swinging into action this afternoon, and then all this week they are interviewing girls. Every afternoon when the girls are out of school, the committee swings into action, and then they have a massive, I don't know how many meetings trying to decide, okay, out of the, how many is it, 26 who applied, they have to pick the 6 who get to go, which is the part I wouldn't want to do. But it's such a life-changing opportunity. It's a wonderful program. So thank you, Tech Trek Committee. Thank you, Martha. And good luck to you all. Local scholarship, too. These are the groups that are just, things are so hectic for them right now. And if you aren't involved with those committees, you have no idea. So I'm here to sort of let you know, you got a busy club. even if you don't see all the pieces. So local scholarship also, we have 4 different categories, excuse me. High school STEM scholarships, Sierra College recipients, high school CLEO, which is a 4-year renewable scholarship, and Sierra College re-entry. So there are various reading groups currently reading and weighing, evaluating all kinds of applications. They had more applications than in the past, and due to COVID, on the recommendation of the counselors, we dropped the GPA slightly. So they're getting more girls. Anne says her overall impression is incredible resilience. They're getting some heart-wrenching applications, but along with the struggles some of the girls have had is their resilience and their problem solving and overcoming those. So it's another yin-yang of, oh my gosh, you poor girl, and oh my gosh, look what you've done. And besides that, despite COVID, despite not being in school in person a lot, they're still achieving, they're engaged, they're on all kinds of things. So it's a great opportunity to read about these girls, give you new hope for our next generation. So does Ava. So thank you for your support. We give more scholarships than any other branch I know of, thanks to you, thanks to a generous bequest from Cleo Gibson, which is the 2 scholarships over on the side. So all kinds of ways, whether you give us your time and effort or donations, everything goes to such a great cause for the next generation. Couple meetings to give you a preview on. Deb York is going to stand up and just say a bit. I'm sorry, your name bumped over to the second line. The next meeting will be at Nevada County Media, and we'll give you directions on the lodestone.
Okay, nice to see so many people today. So just a couple tidbits about our next meeting, which is April 23rd. And it won't be in this lovely room, although I'm really missing that already. But it's going to be at Nevada County Media. And we'll give you directions. It's out on Whispering Pines off Idaho, Maryland. And it's actually pretty exciting to have, and Ada knows it very well, but to have this in our community. They put together an organization, a business really, that does all kinds of media for Nevada County. And we originally wanted to record it because it was going to be our community forum. So that's why we're out there and not here. And our community forum, we moved to October because of COVID and all of the stress on the school systems and everybody trying to recover from all of that. So we'll give you directions. If anyone needs a ride and doesn't feel comfortable getting there, it's not too hard to get there. It's off of Whispering Pines if you've been out in that area. But give me a call and we'll set up someone to pick you up. So we're going to use that time to the first whole part of it will be just a chance for you to get to know each other again. And as we're coming out of hibernation for the past 2 years, we kind of have a pent-up need to talk and see our friends and meet new friends. And so we've structured some small tables with conversations to just come back together again. And then we're also going to introduce the beginning of our diversity, equity, and inclusion program, which is what we'll do more on in October. And this will be really looking at the AAUW California put together a nice program of what diversity is, what equity is, what inclusion is, why it's important, and then a really nice little video, it's just a few minutes, but on what inclusion really means. And I think it means a lot more than what we realize. So as women being in a meeting with all men, or being in a place where people don't speak the same first language as you do, or they come from a different background, we all have experienced some of those things. So it'll be a lot of fun and a real time to engage with each other. So we'll see you at that point, and it's April 23rd. Same time, different place.
And I'm almost done. Timing myself. A couple notes about the May installation luncheon. We are right in the middle of reserving and planning that, and asking the proposed officers if they're available. So I can't give you a definite date, but We'll have it in the lodestone, and we'll send out an email when we do. 2 dates, May 3rd, Alta Sierra Country Club, and that would cost $35, or May 25th at Las Catarinas restaurant for $25. It depends on which date more of the officers can attend. It's basically that big thing. You can't have an installation without officers. It falls flat. So at that date, we'll have the installation, the Edie Silverman Award, the named gift honorees, a really wonderful video tribute to Cleo Gibson. Cleo made a significant donation for education over 2 years ago, and we haven't been able to recognize that or to thank her because we haven't met in person. So this video is to make up for that. We will hear from people who knew Cleo, who was a past president of our branch, and see some of the impact of what she gave us. And Lodestone is going to be where you need to look for details, and we will also send out emails as needed. So look forward to that. I was going to talk about interest groups, but I think my time is up. Join in the interest groups. There's my short version of the message. And I'm going to turn this over to Mary, who will introduce Jan, and away we go.
Hey everybody, so good to see you. Our speaker today is Jan Nottingham, and her topic is Neurogenesis. She has an MA in spiritual psychology. She is an artist and expressive arts facilitator. Back in the 1980s, she was a certified financial planner. She studied the psychology of money and developed art workshops for women to uncover their beliefs about money. In addition to her master's in spiritual psychology, she incorporates art into psychology, and later the benefits of art in aging. I want to thank Janine Martin for putting this program together today, and for suggesting and coordinating with Jan. So please welcome Jan Nottingham.
I guess I need practice in not being nervous, but what the heck. Anyway, I have this wonderful little card to share with you to start off. It says, "My struggle to remain healthy is gradually killing me." And I can say that with all honesty because since I became interested in the brain and our bodies, which happen to be attached to our brains, there is so much information. I'm sure many of you are aware of the quantities of information that come in about this subject, and it is enough to just make you want to go to Mars with that gentleman that's trying to take us all there. This morning, in the Union this morning, which I read around 5 o'clock when they deliver it, there were 2 things I found interesting on this subject. First of all, the hospital, Sierra Memorial Hospital, wrote an article about dementia, and the thing that was really interesting was they said that there are 400 kinds of dementia. Wow. Like, who knew? They did say that Alzheimer's is the most common one, but there's 400 different kinds of dementia. And then the other article that I found interesting on Homer's iPad was that Jeff Bezos is backing a lab that claims it will cure aging in the next 20 years. Seriously, this is serious. His goal is to enable people to have a healthier life for a longer period of time and to reverse illness in patients of all ages. And this type of study is already being done. It's called regenerative medicine, different kinds of medicine. And I'm hoping to live long enough to be regenerated in 20 years when he finally gets it going. But anyway, the title of this talk was Neurogenesis, a Practical Plan for Superaging. By the way, I'm not going to be flipping these, Marty. Okay. So the first thing I want to talk about is, well, what's a superager and what does it take to be a superager? Well, the superager, they're studying the concept of superaging with people who are in their 80s and 90s, who have not had any brain degeneration. They have brains functioning as well as much younger people. As a matter of fact, it's kind of interesting because one of the tests that they gave to people who applied for this, I think the study said there were about 1,000 people who applied who thought they were superagers. There weren't a whole lot left when it was done. But the concept was they gave people 15 unrelated words and to see how many they could remember. Now, I know you're all going to go home and try this. Because I haven't tried it yet. I'm a little nervous about it. But anyway, the superagers were people who could remember at least 9 words. Because that's what a 50-year-old can remember after that time period. But most people who are older can only remember 5. So parts of the brain shrink with age, which is one of the reasons why most people experience a gradual slowing of some parts of our memory. And even if you avoid Alzheimer's, typically, probably many of you are already not remembering names. That's a very common one that happens early on. But they also found when they did autopsies of some of these superagers who passed away during the study, these folks, there were brains that had the tangles and whatever it is, the plaque that's in the brain if you have Alzheimer's. But these folks who were superagers didn't have any symptoms of Alzheimer's. And so the people studying this are saying, well, you know, we don't have a solution yet for Alzheimer's. We don't have a magic pill. We don't have anything. Really, they've been studying it for years because more and more of us are getting older, and typically that's when these things occur. So they decided, and this is what the whole point of what I'm going to be sharing with you today is, let's talk about what we can do to prevent these things happening, since at this point we can't cure them. So building cognitive reserves seems to be a big factor. The idea is, we're not to that yet. The idea is that working the brain keeps it strong and contributes to having more relationships among neurons, and losses due to aging would have reduced effect. The more connections or pathways you have, the more you can afford to lose if a degenerative process should occur. So this is the flip side of saying, well, we'll just keep struggling along and try to come up with a pill that's going to help. We're going to try to come up with things that we can do to help us not have these degenerative processes happen. Then the second part of the talk is neurogenesis. Well, what is neurogenesis? It's just the growth of new brain cells, and it's how the brain renews and upgrades itself. I guess we could say, well, why do we need to worry about this? Our brain renews itself, doesn't it? Well, yes and no. Your brain is constantly adding new neurons, but it's also taking them away. The brain forms new connections, but unless you maintain the processes, sometimes they don't last. That's why when we learn something new, if we don't keep reinforcing it, practicing it, sometimes we don't remember it. So wouldn't you like to assist in the process of building a cognitive reserve to help your brain's ability to improvise and find alternative ways of remembering things? Wouldn't longevity with a high quality of life be better than one without the other? Now the question you'll ask is, well, if I follow this program that I'm going to be sharing with you today, will that boost my neurogenesis? And all I can tell you is that it's the best we have at this point. We simply don't know because science is lagging behind as far as discovering. It's only been the last 20 years that we've had access to the imaging techniques for the brain that we now have. And think about how many years, hundreds and thousands of years, people were wondering, well, what makes us work? There was actually a big conflict about whether it was our heart. Many people years ago thought it was our heart that made our bodily functions work. And then the other side of it, including Galen, Dr. Galen years ago, said, no, it's the brain. So it's all new, and we're starting to put this together. We're learning how to make neuro-healthy choices instead of neurotoxic choices. The brain is, of course, the master center of the body, coordinating all our activities. And considering the job it has to do, it's kind of a small organ. It only weighs a little over 2 pounds. And our brain is divided into distinct functions. Before we had all these neuroimaging techniques, though, the only way we could figure out what was going on with the brain was educated guesses based on observation. Other than that, we could do autopsies and take bodies apart. But I think I remember that there were some religious objections for quite a while about people having their bodies taken apart after their death. So it's only been mostly educated guesses. So that's what I want to introduce you to right now. This is an early non-invasive technique called phrenology, which means mind study. And this was a popular, now pseudo-scientific process that was developed in the early 19th century. It stemmed from the theories of a German doctor named Franz Joseph Gall from his observations and interviews. When he was 9 years old, he noticed that some of his classmates who had superior memories also had eyes that bulged. So he figured that, well, if their memories and they have bulging eyes, that means that that part of their brain is where this technique comes from. And as he got older and did more studying, he actually observed. He went into prisons, he went into mental institutions, he did a lot of observations. And at the time when this was prevalent in the 19th century, neurologists thought this was great because this was all the information they had. And so they thought that coming to believe that various parts of our brains were responsible for different functions. And actually the technique worked like this. They thought that the skull followed the brain the way a glove would follow the hand. So if there were bumps and indentations on the skull, he assumed that that meant that the brain had those bumps and indentations. So for instance, when he went into prisons and he found pickpockets had dual bulges, some of them had bulges on the side of their head, that meant that they were more likely to want to acquire things. So the size and development of each area, which he called faculties, implied a greater or lesser disposition toward the trait. Phrenologists also believed that such traits and their respective organs could be modified through the practice of restraint or the conscious exercise of a positive quality. These faculties included everything from reproduction to affection, vanity, and musical ability. So as a phrenologist felt the skull, he would use his knowledge of where these different faculties were, and he would then tell you what your, temperament is, what your strengths and weaknesses were. Now, some words that we still have in our vocabulary came from this period of time, like highbrow, lowbrow, well-rounded, and shrink. Seriously, because that meant you would be able to shrink certain undesirable qualities. Getting your head examined which is now considered sort of a negative comment. You better go have your head examined. It was just what people wanted. As a matter of fact, they had phrenology parlors. You could try that sometime, maybe as a fundraiser. And in America, this was big in America, by the way. It was big in Scotland, England, some other countries, but we really loved it in America, as you can imagine. Go to phrenology parlors and get told how your traits are, and then you could work on it. As a matter of fact, it sounds like now, because the gentleman who made this, these were done by the Fowler brothers, and they were American entrepreneurs in the mid-19th century, and they made this kind of stuff to sell. They also made publications that told people how to eat better, work and play for proper mental functioning. And that's just what I'm going to tell you today. So we're constantly seeking self-knowledge. So this is a bust that they sold. The Fowler brothers were really big on this stuff, and it says, "For 30 years I've studied crania and living heads from all parts of the world, and have found in every instance that there is a perfect correspondence between the conformity of the healthy skull of an individual and his known characteristics." And he's gone on to say other things. There were so many phrenologists, though, there was actually more than one map of the brain. But as it turns out, Gall and the phrenologists were correct when it came to the central debate of neurology of the time. The brain is compartmentalized, with each piece serving a specific function. The modern map of the brain, however, does not correlate to the classic map of the phrenologists, because theirs was more personality-based, whereas the modern map is more based on fundamental functions such as mathematical ability or language ability and so forth. But all of the other assumptions of phrenology, however, are false. The brain is not, after all, a muscle. It doesn't get bigger or smaller depending on use. But here's the key. Our brains do change with what's called plasticity. The changes occur on a microscopic level and have to do with the strength and density of neural pathways, not how big our brains are. So although it was considered quackery, it's considered quackery today, in the 19th century it was a widespread medical movement and a major influence in the development of ideas about the brain. As more scientific methods began to take hold within medicine and the secrets of the brain began to be revealed, the last vestiges of phrenology disappeared. Although in this century it has been used in negative ways to determine which kinds of people are better than other kinds. So it's definitely still around in a more negative form. I also found it interesting in doing the studying about the brain that UCLA has a brain mapping center. I thought, wow, UCLA has a brain mapping center. And they say that their goal is to advance the understanding of the relationship between structure and function in the human brain. So they're still studying this, using what they find for medical reasons, for surgical reasons, and so forth. Well, you know, the truth of it is, we have a long way to go. I mean, what we know today is, we think is great, but it's pretty darn minuscule compared to what we really need to know in order to help us have a long and healthy brain life. So neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to generate new neurons and establish new neural connections as we grow older. And this is what we call neurogenesis. And while it's true that our brains are much more plastic during the early years, and our capacity does decline with age, plasticity happens throughout our lives. So it was traditionally thought that our brains were through growing by the time we were adults. But now we know that that's not true, that we can add new neurons and generate new neural connections as we get older. And one of the people I read said, this is why we should just retire the word retirement, because we need to keep going. We need to keep working our brains in order to have this work. The social norm for the elderly used to be grim and passive. We're all going to be sitting in rocking chairs and enter physical and mental decline. Certainly, those of you in here know that's not true. Maybe the general public still doesn't get it, but the idea is to spread the information, if you will. So the inspiring thing now is that we can enhance our brain's performance by our own efforts. For the first time in the history of the planet, scientists know that we can increase our rate of neurogenesis by the choices we make in daily life. I don't think I've ever had to speak to a microphone. The idea is, but neuroplasticity is not an automatic process. If you retire in the literal sense of the word, sit on the sofa or sit in the proverbial rocking chair and watch TV, you won't be aiding your brain in making its new connections. So although there's still much to be learned, recent studies have revealed that we can make changes to our brain. Some of the factors that researchers say may be contributing to building what we call a cognitive reserve. Let's try something. Everybody put your hands together. We're going to play a little brain game here. Some of you are familiar with this. You've done it in certain classes before. But here's what I want you to do. Put your hand out and then switch. One side, go to the other side. One side, go to the other side. Many of you are brilliant in here because you're doing it. But take it out to your friends, take it out to your family, especially the men. They can't get this at all. And that's a brain game. Here's another one you can try. Try to get both hands moving together. Up, down, and then the other side, so that you're doing it, both of them together. This one's a little tricky, but it's a good one to practice. These are good things to practice. A few brain games to get you started on building some cognitive reserves. So these are neurohealthy things rather than neurotoxic. Now what we're going to talk about next, there we are. What it is a compilation of all the things we know about the things that will help our brains. And we call them seeds. So seeds, I think I gave you a handout so you don't have to look at it, just take it home and then pore over it when you get home. I've also given you a handout that shows where you can write in different action you can take in each of these seeds, because although many of you are doing many of the things here, there might be a few things you can do to pick up the way your brain works. So let's talk about seeds, and this is what we call a practical plan for superaging. And the interesting thing is I, for one, used to think that my brain was separate from my body. How many of you used to not realize that we're sort of a holistic thing here? Our brains and our bodies sort of go together. But we didn't really realize it. But now we know that what's good for our brain is also good for our body. So this isn't about choosing one or the other, ladies. You have to do them all. So some of the things you may not like about what I'm going to share with you are things you have to do. And it's not about these kind of seeds, but maybe that'll help you remember. Certainly Chris knows about seeds, right? So these are all interrelated, and many of you already do some of the positive things you need to do to keep things going. Oh, we've got sleep is the first one. Okay, that's fine, except I'm going to talk about stress, which is a little further down. It doesn't matter. But stress is a biggie, probably one of the most important. You all know when people are stressed out, it actually increases their aging, and you can see it. I mean, I remember seeing Barack Obama going through some kind of trauma, and suddenly his hair was white. And that was, we'd have to say that was certainly due to some of the stress he was under. But stress, if you have too much stress, it's like using a nuclear reactor to operate a hair dryer. I seem to be sinking. Okay. After being persistently bombarded by the hormone cortisol, neurons eventually wither away, and your hippocampus, where learning and memory reside, becomes affected. Stress leads to increased inflammation in the arteries, which can lead to heart attacks, heart disease, and stroke. Excuse me 1 second. Doctors have told us that 60 to 90% of all of our illnesses and all of our accidents are due to stress. Now, some of the things we can do about stress are, of course, meditation, mindful breathing, but I want to share one that we've talked about for years now called the 3-bucket theory. Some of you have heard this, but think of all the stresses you have in your life, everything you stress out about, whether it has to do with the war that's going on now, whether it has to do with global warming, or just your relationship in your family, whatever. We all have stresses, and stress in and of itself isn't bad, it's just having too much. So now you have 3 buckets. Now there's some things you can do to get rid of some of the stress, and you can do it yourself, having a chat with your child, perhaps. Whatever it is that you know you have control over, you put in bucket 1. And that's the bucket that you can be dealing with. The things that you know you can have something to do with helping, like maybe getting a political candidate elected, or doing something about climate, joining a committee, becoming a member of AAUW, whatever it is you can do to have an influence in the world, you put in bucket 2. But guess what? Bucket 3 is for all the rest of the stuff that you really can't do anything about, that I know many of us stress out about all the time. I mean, Chris and I have talks about our stresses about the whole world all the time. But it's not anything we can do if we're just talking about it and stressing out over it. So you put that in bucket 3, but you can always take something out of there and do something about it. But that's just some help, perhaps, in getting rid of some of your stress, because it certainly isn't easy. And remember, these things are all interconnected. When you reduce your stress, your sleep's going to be better, and so on and so forth. And of course, laughter is a potential stress reliever. Each time you laugh, there's a rush of oxygen. You can't do it by exercising. You have to eat less. That's the bad news. Eat less and drink more water. And my husband, Homer, used to teach a spin class along with all the other classes he taught. And he was sure that by teaching that class once a day, he would be able to lose weight. So as the years went by and he gained 30 pounds, he found that that wasn't happening. And then he read that in order to lose 1 pound exercising, he would have to be on that spinning bike 10 hours. So he could stay at the gym all day and keep spinning, which, for those of you who don't know, is one of those bikes where they go fast and slow and stand up and whatever. Or you can eat less. And it wasn't until that happened that he was able to lose weight. You can also gradually eliminate things that add unnecessary calories, like making lettuce wraps. How many of you eat lettuce wraps? You can even get a lettuce wrap at In-N-Out Burger. So if you want to keep eating meat, tell them you want it wrapped in lettuce, and that takes away the calories from the bun. And no one tells you you have to give up chocolate. When we say to people, well, if you want to lose weight, eat less, they say, well, I can't give up chocolate. That has nothing to do with it. Eat less. Just eat what you want to eat, but eat it in moderation, smaller amounts. And use a smaller plate. That's another tip you can try. Let's see. By the way, you will all have sheets of paper where you can write things that you want to do in each of these categories. Homework. And the last thing that, no, not the last thing, the next to last thing is sleep. And that's a pretty easy one because they say we just need to get 7 hours of sleep. They do say it's okay to take naps, thankfully, because if they said I couldn't take a nap, I don't know what I'd do. But not getting enough sleep is associated with neurological problems, including Alzheimer's. But you can see how these things are all interrelated, because if you have a lot of stress, are you going to get good sleep? Probably might be a little difficult if you're constantly stressing out over something. So these things are all interrelated. Doing exercise will help you get better sleep. It's all holistic, it all goes together. And last but not least is social. We need to maintain our social contacts. Doing these kinds of meetings is better for your brain than doing Zoom. As you've all found out during the pandemic, sometimes it's even hard to get back to where you were before these things happened. We've been locked up for 2 years. Did not do great things for our brains. Not being able to take advantage of what we always did and always wanted to do. I seem to sometimes come up with what I call the been there, done that syndrome. It's like, well, do you want to go do such and such? And, well, no, I've been there, done that. I don't want to go do that. I'll just stay home and sit in my rocking chair and watch TV. No, that's not good. And so if you find yourself using that as an excuse, you might want to just notice what you're saying. So assess what's kept you back during the pandemic and realize that we need to get back to being, doing the things we've been doing all our lives and certainly want to keep doing. And if you think, oh, well, I'm getting a late start on taking good care of my health, and I'm wondering if it's too late to make up for years of bad habit or neglect, the good news is that the human body has an amazing capacity to regenerate, renew, restore, and start again, especially if you give it some help. And I remember another great saying I heard years ago. I think it's been attributed to lots of different people, including Mae West. But it was, if I knew I was going to live so long, I'd have taken better care of myself. I love that one. The older I get, the truer it gets. So becoming our highest and best selves involves using our brain's full potential, physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. This means exercising our choices in life and making neuro-healthy rather than neurotoxic choices in our daily living. And remember again that our brains are not separate from our body. What we do that's good for our body is going to be good for our brain, and vice versa. So put a plan together, a new committee, a new group, brain solvency. Put a plan together, keep trying, keep improving, keep up the momentum, and pick a new challenge and go for it. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And to conclude, I want to just read you a very brief quote by Sir Francis Bacon. He said, begin doing what you want to do now. We are not living in eternity. We have only this moment, sparkling like a star in our hand and melting like a snowflake. That's beautiful. Anyway, thank you all. And I do have a bibliography. I have a written bibliography if any of you are interested, but I think practically everywhere you can find books that say brain something or other, don't they? I mean, everybody's writing books and information about the brain. But this one here called Neurogenesis, Diet and Lifestyle, that's a really good one if you want to read more about the brain. And then again, the vintage years, because she really explains a lot of the new information we have about the brain and how incredible it is to do artistic pursuits to keep ourselves going. And she has lots of examples in here. I'm supposed to let it be open to questions, remembering that I am not actually a neuroscientist. I just like to read about these. It's very interesting as they discover more and more things we can do. So, does anybody have any questions?
I have one. So I have a problem because learning about the plan to help us transform ourselves to age that you said, what's his name, that Amazon guy, Jeff Bezos is coming up with, that just adds to my stress about overpopulation.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. When I had my first child, I joined ZPG, which was zero population growth, and their whole goal was not to have more than 2 children. And that went away real quick. I mean, that was sort of a popular notion, that if we only have 2 children, we're just replacing ourselves, right? Well, everybody didn't exactly agree with that, and people got nervous, and that whole concept of overpopulation went away. So I think you're right. But I think really, as he says in the article that we read, he's not really trying to keep people alive longer. He's trying to let them have a better quality of life. And some of you probably already are involved in regenerative medicine. There are people, I mean, my husband has had things shot into his knee to regenerate. It's sort of like, he calls it WD-40 in your knee. They put it in, you know, there are doctors that are already working with regenerative things, especially in countries other than America. You can go places and get a lot of regenerative work done. And actually, I think it's the same concept that they came up with during the COVID, inventing the COVID vaccine, is doing it differently than we've ever done it before. Any other questions, comments? Yes.
I just have a comment about the creativity part. I'm involved with the drawing class for the last 6 months, and there's a group of women like ourselves, and we meet once a week, and it's through Zoom. And one thing I have observed is that the ladies that struggle the most is the ones that are looking for the rules.
The rules?
Creativity. I mean, just this week, one lady asked the artist that teaches it, do you have to some writing? What? So my invitation to that comment is that just enjoy the process.
Yeah.
That's, I find it meditative. And I don't care what it looks like at the end. It's just that as long as I enjoy the process, just let go of the rules.
Well, hopefully that particular person will end up building a lot more neurons because she's struggling with this and having to learn.
Yeah.
It's okay to draw. I mean, for years I thought that I was not creative because I didn't know how to draw. And I thought that, you know, being artistic and creative meant you could be like, be able to do the Mona Lisa or build a beautiful statue or something. I didn't realize there's a lot of ways to be creative. And so creativity to me is where it's at. It's really the most fun. to just try things out. We have a lot of fun doing it. And it really helps. It just helps your whole attitude. Thank you for sharing that.
We have to learn how to play again.
Yeah.
Just to play.
Exactly. Just
Yeah.
learn how to play.
Yeah.
And I know many of you in here probably years ago were probably even told that you couldn't sing, so you better not sing. And that I know I was told by when I was taking a ballet class, and I walked on the side of my shoes, the teacher kicked me out of the class. So I stopped doing ballet, which my whole life I've wished I'd been a cabaret dancer now.
It's not too late.
I know, but I need to find more women who want to do it. There are places, but we all have things we wanted to do or started to do. Maybe there's an instrument you wanted to play or started to play and you'd like to continue. Just pick it up, do it again. I mean, actually, it's probably one of the easier things you can do to keep your brain functioning. Another question, comment? Fearful comment? Yeah.
So I want to just comment on the writing group because it fits a lot of those categories. It's the hardest thing we've ever done, and it's stretching our brains in new directions. So if anybody has an inkling to try and experiment there, I think we'll hit a few marks.
That's great. That's great. I'm sure you have a lot of different committees that really allow you to stretch your brain. I mean, even doing the book clubs you have and the political conversation. It's always fun to discuss things. And then talk about how you can put it in bucket 3 because there's nothing you can do about it. Hello.
Hi. I just want to make a comment. My work was in education, and what we talked about in education was the idea that IQ was not fixed, that you can actually get smarter. When I grew up, in my family, there were gifted children, and people were told, you will always be this way, which you sort of alluded to with the dancing and that type of thing. And I think it's fascinating to see this. The implications of that in education are a kid who, might be labeled as, less than, can learn and get smarter, and their IQ can go up. So I'm really happy to see this, for us as we age. Thank you.
Thanks for the comment. I also think that just labeling people by their IQ is the least effective way to help people, because, I mean, you become what people tell you are. Well, I only have an IQ of 80, therefore, I don't have to take responsibility for doing anything because I'm so dumb. I mean... Hello. It's the same with illness. Sometimes when we're diagnosed with a particular illness, we become the illness. We talk about it all the time. It just makes me shudder because now I am whatever it is the doctor said I have.
Well, there's, back to the education, there's also different types of intelligence. You have artistic intelligence, you have science, you have math, you have the reader.
You have emotional intelligence. Yeah, absolutely.
Don't need help.
Thank you. Stand up, would you? Yeah.
Well, I would just like to say, I think this program is fabulous. It really gives me a lot to think about. I think I have a lot of these areas covered, but I have set my ways, and I'm not creative, and so there's things that I think I should do, but I don't do, and this just gets me, I hope it gets me moving to start doing.
Well, accountability is really where it's at. When you talk about commitment, you have to also look at being accountable. Once I went on a trip and we were told to start off with a list of things we were committed to. And I had my whole list, 20 pages long. I'm committed to this, I'm committed to this, I'm committed to this. Sorry, ladies. I'm not committed to giving talks. by the time the weekend was over, most people had maybe one, two, if they were lucky, three things they were committed to. Because in order to see if you're committed to something, it has to belong in your calendar. Yeah. If it's not on your calendar, you're not committed to it. Well, I'll wake up and see if I decide to go to class, Tai Chi today. It has to be something you're committed to, and also it's great if you have somebody who holds you accountable. You share the results. And what did you do this week in the area of blah blah? And then the excuses come. Well, it rained. Whatever. So there are ways to help. Get a friend, join a group where you can share and see what you've actually done. It's really hard to do this stuff by yourself.
We're all pretty good here, but with COVID, a lot of things have changed, and what I found is, some of you know this who know me, I try to check in each week on somebody I haven't connected with in a while. And I know AAUW does a good job with this. What's happening? Because some people have fallen into a depression or they've had a loss, and just checking in with that person. Come take a walk with me, come to the Qigong or Tai Chi class, come to the AAUW meeting. So it's important to reach out, go through your list. I try to go through my contacts and I go, ooh, I haven't seen so-and-so, I wonder if they're okay.
That's great, Julie.
Jan, I was going to say thank you very much, and I wanted to piggyback what Lisa said about education, because I'm a former teacher myself, and I thought you would be fantastic to present to the high school and teachers and stuff before school starts, because teachers do get in a mindset about a child. And it's not true. Their aptitude can change, their IQ can change, and I think that it would be absolutely fantastic for you to do that. So you have a
now you're arranging speaking engagements.
What you don't want you to get.
Probably I'll even learn how to use a microphone. Thank you.
I would just like to add a comment also. Spiritual psychology, I think we need part 2 to demonstrate how we in our aging process are also evolving spiritually, and how our brain and our body are seeking out that next level of development in all of us, which I call spirituality.
Absolutely. Thank you. Anybody?
Stand up. Zoom, it's me. I have just, the last month or so, had such an exciting experience that relates to what you're talking about, and I just want to share it. And it builds beautifully on this idea of spirituality, because through reading a wonderful book on spirituality, I was introduced to the whole idea of quantum physics and how quantum physics relates really wonderfully to Buddhism and some other kinds of spiritual practices. So I found a book that had been written for people like me, because I was never strong in math. I took physics once, physics for poets, and struggled through it. And so I thought, no, I don't know if I can handle this book, but I'll give it a try. I have handled it just fine. And I am understanding some amazing things coming out of quantum physics. And it just has me really excited.
What's the name of the book? What's the name of the book?
Can't remember that.
It's okay. That's the first thing to go. When you remember it, pass it on, because I took physics one time and I was called a peripatetic scholar because I just kept walking around changing my seat and wishing I hadn't ever picked that.
I just wanted to make a comment. I'm a former teacher as well, and I used to tell my students, because I've studied the brain a little bit, And your brain believes what you tell it. You know, if you say, oh, I'm stupid, I can't do math, I've never been good at math, your brain creates a pathway, and so every time you say that, that pathway gets stronger and stronger and stronger. A perfect example was I was on the coast doing a very long 100-mile bicycle ride, and we had this super steep hill that we were going up, and I looked at that hill and I'm going, okay, put your head down, don't look up, you're going to get to the top. I know it's hot, but it's going to be over soon. You can take a drink and I talked myself through it, but if I had said it's too hot, my legs are tired, other people are stopping, I can stop, I would have failed. You know, but I talked to myself, and I never realized the art of positive thinking. And so when I tell my students, I would tell my students, you can do this. Just, you know, say, I can do this, take one step at a time. If you put the effort in, you can accomplish this. It really, really helps.
It's absolutely critical.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, sometimes we laugh about, well, the art of positive thinking. It's been around a long time.
Yeah.
But it's really critical, really important. Just like I said when I thought, well, I'm not creative, I said, you know, I wasn't even trying to be creative. So thank you. That's a good point.
I think we need to have Jan back again. Clear out for the church, but thank you so much for coming. Thank you.